Dạ, cá nào quá.
How would you like to be given a house, 1,000 hectares of land, the machinery to work it, and not contribute a cent? In fact, how would you like to walk in with nothing and farm Australia? At Lakeland in the far north of Queensland, 28 refugees have been given this chance, but at the expense of everything they've ever known: Vietnam.
Vietnam, Vietnam hãy tự vào đời, Vietnam hai câu nói bên con núi. Vietnam nước tốt, Vietnam, Vietnam tên gọi là người. Vietnam hai câu nói sau cùng đi.
The chance for the Vietnamese to start a new life was given to them by this man, who found them willing to share in his Lakeland experiment. His name is Cyril Anderson. He's a self-made man, who today runs a multi-million-dollar transport company. Cyril Anderson has been successful at every business venture he's undertaken. And now at the age of 72, he's taken on another challenge. With the Vietnamese, he thinks it's possible to farm successfully in the far north, to succeed where others before him have failed. He's taken on Lakeland, one of the biggest properties in the north.
I wish to thank you all for coming, and I want to show you a short film on Lakeland to show you what its potential has been and what it can be.
Ông chủ đã cảm ơn tất cả mọi người đã vào đây và ông sẽ chiếu cái phim về tương lai của Lakeland.
Thank you. Okay.
This is the story of one man's challenge and how that challenge is being met. Here in a continent where the pioneering tradition is still so fresh is the irresistible call of a new frontier.
10 years ago, a mining millionaire, Clive Foister, bought this fertile, undeveloped country and began the biggest farming experiment in the north.
We are fortunate to have in our midst a gentleman of the calibre of Mr. Foister. And on behalf of all Queenslanders, I wish him every success in the huge task which lies ahead. I now have much pleasure in naming this township Lakeland, and may God bless all who live in it, and may they find happiness and contentment here.
Unfortunately for those living on Lakeland, Clive Foister failed. He lost $9 million here when he attempted to transform this sleepy tropical cattle country into the biggest grain-growing complex in the north. He created a new town, built a school and a motel. He constructed roads and dams and cleared vast areas of previously untamed bush and planted crops. He saw Lakeland as supplying food for the markets of Asia, but a combination of bad seasons and crop diseases ruined him. This country has always attracted the adventurous that have wanted to farm here on a grand scale, but no matter how grand their hopes and dreams, they always seem to fail. Part of Foister's hopes washed down the Laura River when this extravagant dam project burst, releasing water from the biggest dam on Lakeland. Just as the dam had run out of water, so had Foister run out of money. He was forced to sell, and Cyril Anderson was the only man willing to pick up someone else's dream. It cost him $1 million.
We've gained a lot from the experience that Clive Foister had. Okay? He spent a lot of money in trying to create a port, trying to create this dam, trying to clear a terrific area, and in my opinion, a little too fast, a little too quick. And I believe that growing of different crops, such as we're entering into now, and that is peanuts, this is the future of this area. There's no question about it whatsoever.
Việt Nam sẽ tự hào đời, Việt Nam hai câu nói bên bàn đôi. Việt Nam nước tốt, Việt Nam tên gọi là người Việt Nam hai câu nói sau cùng thi lìa đời. Việt Nam đây miền sinh tươi, Việt Nam đem vào sông núi, tự do công bình bác ái muôn đời. Việt Nam không đòi xương máu, Việt Nam kêu gọi thương nhau, Việt Nam đi xây đắp niềm vui dài lâu.
Peanuts have never been grown so far north in Australia before, and at Lakeland they're being heralded as the wonder crop. There's a world demand for peanuts, so they command a high price. And so the Vietnamese had hoped to harvest a crop worth $250,000. These people arrived in Australia with nothing but their hopes and dreams, a people without land. Cyril Anderson had plenty of land but no people to work it. And so the idea was born, an idea that a private company could help with Australia's refugee problem. It wasn't to be charity, but a business-type agreement. Everything the Vietnamese received, they had to pay back.
We flew in a party representing 3 different groups. 2 of the groups turned it down on account of its isolation and other problems which I'm not conversant with. But one group, the present group we have here, led by one of the senior members of the family, the elder of them, the term is used, I suppose, the old man. And he convinced the rest that it was well worth going into, and this family group of roughly 6 families, all relations in relation to it, and they've come up here and they have worked very hard to achieve what has been done.
How do you think he convinced them to come to this isolation?
Well, he came up here himself, and he liked the climate, but he realised that there was going to be a lot of hard work, and this didn't seem to worry him. He thought that they could do it and they could handle it. And I think that also he was setting a standard for his sons, daughters and relatives.
What sort of people are they?
They are absolutely clean in every way for cleanliness. You couldn't wish for anything better. They live with me in the home there. They did the cooking. They did everything there, and you couldn't get anybody cleaner, right? Nor a better type. They're equivalent to, in my opinion, over and above the average Australian.
Few Australians would ever consider coming to such a remote area. For Mr. Hung and his family, the choice was simple. It was either stay in a refugee camp on a government handout, work in a factory, or take a chance in the far north. Mr. Hung is 72 years old, the same age as Cyril Anderson, and although they don't speak the same language, there's a mutual respect, as both in their own way have taken on a risk at Lakeland.
Mr. Hung has always lived on the land. As a young couple, he and his wife left their isolated village to look for opportunity elsewhere. They started off with 2 acres of land 30 years ago, which Mr. Hung expanded into a prosperous coffee plantation of 250 acres. 2 years ago, before they left Vietnam, they had wealth and they had successful children.
Kính thưa giang sơn đất nước, kính thưa tổ tiên ông bà, ngày hôm nay dân dịp
Mr. Huong does not appear proud of his wealth or his successful children, but he holds dear to his heart the fact that 2 of his children serve God. That's the sort of man he is. One of them is a nun who remained in Vietnam to carry on with her work in the hospital. The other is Father Paul, who took charge of the family since their flight from Vietnam. They were a respected family. Some of their ancestors were advisors to kings. This is the kind of heritage the family has, and how much it means to them can only be appreciated by the fact that the ancestral book was the only thing they took with them when they fled from their hometown in 1975. In the ancestral book is recorded the names of all the members of the family. It is a record of the family history. In Mr. Huong's family, the first recorded name goes back to 1555.
The Chinese were the first Asian people who came to this part of Australia. 100 years ago they passed through Cooktown looking for gold in the Palmer River area. They came in their thousands, but left when the gold ran out. Now the Vietnamese settlers from Lakeland use this historic town, not in the search for gold, but to swell the congregation in the local Catholic church, where the parish priest and Father Paul say the Mass together.
For he is full of gentleness and compassion. Since we're mainly Vietnamese this morning, let us have the confiteor in Vietnamese.
There are well over 3,000 refugees in Australia, and almost every one of them, when escaping here, faced despair, terror and death.
When communists came, we felt that we couldn't stay with them.
How did you escape?
Oh, it was a long story. You know, before Saigon fell, we were in the center of Vietnam. My parents somewhere here. I was here.
In the last days of the war, the whole family, which was scattered throughout Vietnam, made their way to Saigon. After Saigon fell, they escaped to Vũng Tàu, a province by the sea. There were refugees everywhere looking for boats. It took them 16 days to buy an old wooden boat with a small motor, which cost them the equivalent of 13,000 American dollars. The first day at sea, the motor broke down, and they were caught by North Vietnam Water Patrol. The boat was confiscated and they were put into prison. 3 of the brothers were taken for re-education. They are still in Vietnam. For 30 days they were detained, but people heard there was a priest among the group and gave them help. At 5 o'clock on the evening of the 19th of June 1975, they escaped again.
Fruit of the vine and work of human hands.
We stopped the boat waiting for the guard, and I celebrated Mass. After I say Mass, I turned to everybody in the boat that we was facing to the death now, because if the communist people caught us again, it was sure that they will kill us. And secondly, our boat is too small for the open sea.
Our Lady, we know that you are the bright star. Please shine on our path as we cross this sea. Storms are all around us, and our boat is very small.
Were any of the people on the boat sailors?
Nobody. You know, I was captain, and that was the first time I go on the sea. Yeah.
How did you navigate?
By our own mind, because you know we know that this area is Malaysia and Indonesia, and we thought that if we sail this way, this direction, we will reach somewhere here.
Did you have a compass or a map?
A toy compass, only that. No map, nothing.
There were 39 people on the boat. It was very crowded, so crowded in fact that there was not enough room for all of them to lie down. Many of them had to lie with their legs over the side if they wanted to rest. Every night there were storms. They became lost and frightened. They had been on the sea for 3 nights and 4 days.
On the last night, everybody on boat were very sick, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, the driver of the boat, asked me which direction to go, because we were lost. And I wake up and I saw the moon, and a very beautiful moonlight. And I told him to follow the moonlight. After hours, my father showed me that there was a star of the sea at the horizon. My vestments and calis and these statues. Yeah. My father put this statue in the front of the cabin of the boat.
And you brought nothing else with you?
Nothing else, except some rice the people gave us at night time. Yeah.
Do you miss those possessions that you had in Vietnam?
Yes, a lot, especially my parents, you know. They have on their life created, I don't know how to say, yeah. And they have to leave everything, yeah, for the freedom.
How did you feel personally about that?
I always miss our life in Vietnam, yeah. And we try to keep our souvenirs, yeah, our memory about it, and we often have a talk about our former life in Vietnam.
Ngày đó có em đi nhẹ vào đời và đem theo trăng sao đến với lời ca núi. Ngày đó có anh mơ lại mộng người và sẽ từ cái tóc giam em vào lòng thôi.
These people had found contentment here on Lakeland after months of struggle and hardship, escaping from their homeland. In the few months that they'd been in Australia, they'd overcome the language difficulties, adapted to new customs, and learnt a whole new way of life. They'd also managed to fill their business agreement with Cyril Anderson. They'd cleared the ground, planted and cultivated with care, and the soil on Lakeland, so similar to that of Vietnam, produced a magnificent crop. The experiment appeared successful beyond anyone's wildest dreams. That is, until the country revealed itself to be as harsh and as brutal to the land's new tenants as it had been to those trying to farm there in the past. Even the experts from the Department of Primary Industry who had been advising the Vietnamese on how to grow peanuts were taken by surprise.
They grew a crop as good as this, but they didn't harvest it.
What went wrong?
Well, quite a number of things. I think it all boils down to probably inexperience, and that's not just on the Vietnamese side, it's on everybody's side. They had a beautiful crop until right near maturity. The weeds came through, they were up 3, 4, 5 feet high. This year, it's the first time that I have ever seen weeds come through a crop. That's a well-grown crop. At 12 weeks, there's a full ground cover, and then just coming through underneath that ground cover, these little weeds, and then when they hit the light, away they go. And I mean, they really grow. I've never seen that before. Our department has no recommendation whatsoever for the control of weeds in peanuts at that time. We just haven't got one.
To get at their crop, they slashed down the weeds, but not being experienced in the growing of peanuts, they didn't know the correct way to go about it. In this paddock, they slashed so low that they stripped the leaves right off the tops of the peanut plants.
Once the leaf goes off the plant, actually these pegs here actually rot off. That's all that is to it. It's purely the plant dying. And the first thing to let go are these pegs. And so when you go to pull out a plant and you haven't got a firm attachment there, I'm afraid you just leave that nut in the ground. This happened over hundreds of acres. And the crop that had the potential of, say, a tonne, in some parts more, to the acre, I'm afraid that, well, they got practically nothing. I'm afraid there are going to be areas here I don't think they'll even bother harvesting.
After this crop, we learn from our mistake, and the other people, the experts, are learning from our mistake too.
Now, on your crop last month, how much money did you think you'd get?
You mean each person?
Yes.
I think about 20,000.
And from what you've seen now, what do you expect to get?
Nothing. Nothing.
Look, this is not a complete failure, right? I anticipate that there will be sufficient revenue, right, to be able to pay the whole general expenses. I'm going to be extremely disappointed if this is not so.
But how about cash in hand? Have they got anything to carry them on till next year?
Well, the cash in hand, I think that the company will have no alternative to turn around and continue with what they have been doing. In other words, subsidising their living expenses for the next year's crop.
Does this failure in this area here not go to prove that Foister was wrong as well, and that it is a dream, that you're living on a dream?
No, not by any means. Foister was principally cultivating a crop that here would be worth about $60 a tonne. For peanuts, it's a different question altogether. At least $300 a tonne here, against $60 a tonne for maize. They're not too bad, Bam. What we got to do is watch next year, right? We got to defeat the high weeds, right? It was disappointing to them, there's no question about it. It's disappointing to all farmers when these things happen. But this is the type of business you're in. They're completely dead. But this here is well worth cultivating, it's well worth harvesting. If they don't want to continue, this would be a disappointment, and I would say that as I see these people that are here and put up with the problems of dust, weather, conditions, I think that their own principle would not allow themselves to walk out. They are classifying this place as their home, and this is where they hope to live for the future.
When the crop fell, their spirit went down too. And some young men thought they might leave next year, but my father said no, because they accept the risk when they worked on farm.
Your family have been here for 1 year exactly. Has your father any regrets about his decision to come?
Would you want me to ask? Ông hỏi rằng ở đây năm rồi, mà bây giờ cha cả lấy làm tiếc vì đã lên đây không?
Không tiếc, rất thỏa mãn cái lên đây.
No regret, and they are very happy to be here.
And what does he think is the future of the family in Australia?
Và cha nghĩ gì về tương lai của gia đình trong trên nước Úc này?
Thấy chúng tôi ở Việt Nam thì làm người nông. Bây giờ lên đây làm người nông thì thấy đất và khí hậu của trời đây thì thấy cũng thích hợp lắm.
He says we were farmers in Vietnam, and now we are farmers here, and the weather is very good for farmer.
Does he ever see the family going back to Vietnam?
Cha nghĩ rằng gia đình sẽ trở về Việt Nam không?
Tôi nghĩ khó lắm, là vì Việt Nam thì hoàn toàn cộng sản, còn mình đi kiếm tự do mà trở về Việt Nam thì cũng là khó.
I think it's very hard because Vietnam is communist now, and we want freedom.
Có bơ vơ là về trời, tìm trên mây xa khơi có áo dài khăn cưới. Ngày đó có kêu lên gọi hồn người.